Hello everyone, I'm Atbin and I'm currently 14 years old. I'm very happy to say that I've finally written my first book. It's called Exoplanets Far Far Away and How We Can Find Them. The book began as an idea around 3 years ago and has finally began selling. Um, as you can probably tell from the title, the book is about exoplanets. Um, that's because I've always been interested in astronomy, but I've always had a particular interest in exoplanets, as you can probably tell from my channel. Um, I was super interested in exoplanets. I watched a lot of videos about them. I watched tons of documentaries. I did a lot of research. I was fascinated by them. That's why when a few years later, when I had finally decided to write a book about it, I was super excited to undertake the project. But I quickly came to the realization that I couldn't just write this book about exoplanets alone. See, exoplanets have a lot of missing information, and just information that can't be explained without bringing up how exoplanets are found. And exoplanets are found with telescopes. To me, it made a lot more sense if I also included telescopes in the book, because they're also very interesting and fascinating pieces of technology that have made tons of scientific discoveries. So and are very important for exoplanets. So that's why I decided to include them as well in the book. The book is written in a way so even someone who has zero knowledge of the subject whatsoever can still understand it a little. That's why the book begins with an introduction. I wanted to write the book in a way so the level, pretty much the difficulty level of the book will remain the same across the entirety of the book. I wanted it to be a reading experience that will be fun and interesting and educational for everyone. So that's why I tried to make it so that it's available and understandable for everyone, which again explains the introduction at the beginning. This introduction has subjects like the universe, exoplanets, galaxies, stars, pretty much the basics of astronomy, and teaches everyone who isn't really that knowledgeable on the subject the basics. After this chapter, there's another chapter which I would also consider an introductory chapter, and it's about distances. I wanted to dedicate an entire chapter to distances because I wanted people to realize and pretty much understand these distances that I talk about in the book so often. Because I feel like some people might assume that, like for example, 420 light years. That doesn't really, you can't really imagine that. It's not really something tangible, and I feel like some people think it's some kind of arbitrary number. That's why I decided to dedicate an entire chapter to distances to explain that no, it's not some weird random arbitrary number. This is how we determine that number, and this is why that's important. After this chapter, there's of course the chapter about telescopes. As you can see here begins. This chapter, I pretty much analyze each telescope that I bring up. I bring up about 8 telescopes, and each telescope I talk about. Here's, for example, the Hubble telescope. Each telescope I talk about, I pretty much mention the most important facts, statistics, and pretty much general facts that have to do with the telescope. If it's a very famous telescope, such as the Hubble Space Telescope, I will mention some of the discoveries it has made, perhaps some fun facts, and some history. If it's a telescope that, for example, hasn't become operational yet, I will explain what discoveries it might make, or what kind of things it might discover, or just the development of it. After the telescopes, there's of course the exoplanets. The exoplanets I pretty much analyze in a very similar way to the telescopes. I take an exoplanet and I talk about the most important facts, statistics, and pretty much general information about it. Here's one of the exoplanets, for example. I talk about things such as mass, size, habitability, temperature, distance from our solar system, all of those things. Um, After the exoplanets, there's a chapter about more complicated subjects. I included this chapter because while writing the book, as I said before at the beginning, I wanted to keep the difficulty level the same across the entire book, and I wanted to keep it as low as possible so it's accessible for everyone. But that meant some subjects that were very important to exoplanets and telescopes. I couldn't just include them in the book because they were simply a little too complicated or a little too difficult. That's why I included a separate chapter at the very end to explain these slightly more difficult subjects. That chapter is only you only have to read it if you're a person who really found the difficulty of the book a little low and needs a little bit more of a challenge. So that chapter is not really for the general public. It's just for the people who are just very interested in astronomy and need a little bit more of a challenge. After that chapter, there's a chapter about pretty much, I would consider, the opposite of the more complicated subjects. It's a chapter full of frequently asked questions. I wrote this chapter with the sole purpose of pretty much educating the people who found the difficulty of the book a little too high. I wanted this to be some kind of encyclopedia that people could refer to and come back to if they didn't understand something in the book. I wanted it to be a helpful guide. So that's why when writing it, I tried to ask myself a few and I tried to ask myself a few questions that I would imagine somebody would ask themselves while reading the book. I also consulted other people about it. And I pretty much tried to make the most helpful guide. After this chapter, which is pretty much almost the last chapter, there's one last chapter. Well, I wouldn't really consider it a chapter. It's only one page, but it's pretty much a list of habitable exoplanets that weren't included in the book. This list contains some of the most habitable exoplanets that we have found, and I pretty much only included this for the people who like exoplanets so much and who like astronomy so much that they weren't just satisfied with this book alone. So I include this list for them to pretty much search up in their free time or in their spare time. Anyone who isn't one of those people doesn't have to read this, doesn't have to do anything. It's just for those people alone. That concludes all of the insides of the book. The book itself, as you can probably tell, is almost a perfect square. I wanted that because I wanted it so when you open up the book, it would be a very wide surface area. I wanted this because I wanted to fit as many images and text in it as possible, especially images. I wanted this book to be a very visual experience, not just a literary experience. I wanted people to look at the images almost as much as they do at the text. Because I feel images can tell a lot more information than just text alone. If I grab an example, here for example, here's a really nice nebula. The text might be able to explain what the nebula looks like, but you will never get a clear image of it. Only with images can you see what it actually looks like. That's why my goal when writing this book was also to make it a very visual and pleasing experience. The book itself is 85 pages long. The pages are made of a very, well, I would say, durable and sturdy paper. It's got a kind of a shiny finish to it. The book is a hardcover, and it's in full color, of course. Everything that has to do with this book, so all of the writing, research, designing, formatting, the layout, everything was done by me. The only things that weren't done by me were pretty much the printing and all the legal stuff. Yeah, so that concludes my book review. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I appreciate you guys listening to this review. And yeah, I will see you later.